you guys stay in a second.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see how many people turned out for this evening's gathering. Basically, it's going to be rather informal. It's going to be casual. We'd like to have a conversation with you and parts of information, as well as hear from you. So I will ask you if you would be kind enough to turn off your cell phones or turn the volume down to 0, so it doesn't ring in the middle of somebody's question or somebody's presentation. And we will just go in rotation tonight and just pass the microphone down, and we'll probably be seated at the tables. And I think you'll be able to hear us. If not, let us know. But again, this is an informal meeting. We really just want to have some time to sit down and talk with you. Okay, so let's start. Anything we need to cover in the beginning for anyone right now? Okay. Okay, this is, your board is seated at the table. You have Dan Engelhop. You have Dan Argentero, who's the general manager. You have Jennifer Duditis, who's the community manager. You have Bruce Heiss, who's the director. You have Bob Martin, who's your vice president. Cindy Pellegrini, who's the director. Mitch Benninger, the director. Maury Thompson, director. And I'm Gloria Hodger, your president.
Well, good evening. I hope you can all hear me. Sounds like it's echoing through the room. I'm going to start off with a little land use planning update. As you can recall, we hired a land use planner, KCI Associates, Wally, back in May of 2018. This gives you some of the milestones that we've completed to date. There was an on-site review and a kickoff meeting in May 2018. There was a detailed analysis performed by KCI of community needs and owner preferences. The primary source for that was the Vision 385 information that former Director Sharon Hinkey put together and did for us. There was a Board of Directors review of what we called in the contract preliminary conceptual master plan. That was in July of 2018. Then something called Hurricane Florence came along and sort of put a clamp on all of our efforts there. So that was in September of 2018. Cranking that effort back up, there was a preview of the plan that the KCI planners came up with. That was in May of 2019, and then, of course, many of you attended the KCI presentation that was held here in the community center in the fire hall, and that was the presentation to the entire community. Since that time, the board has been busy prioritizing planning recommendations and eliminating what we call outliers. That is to say, things that KCI had come up with that we said, you know, it may be appropriate at some other time and place, but these were things like foot golf, soccer fields, dedicated soccer fields, and things like the nine-hole executive golf course. From that effort, KCI will provide us cost estimates for the remaining development recommendations. That's so that the community can be aware of what the costs will be for those various new amenities, improvements of amenities, and impact on future dues, and in other words, how we're going to pay for these things. In the near future, association members will be surveyed to prioritize the community's wants and needs. Whether we do that with a Survey Monkey or however we do it, but it'll give you the way the board will hope to configure that is to say, okay, multi-use facility, this is the cost estimate we have for this, this is how we would hope to finance that, and this is the impact in the future on dues and our financial situation. In the near future, the board will continue to work to eliminate eyesores, explain, and try to explore funding options for these things. In the meantime, the community, and this is switching gears a little bit, But the community must continue to abide by Rule 2017-01. Sounds obscure, it is, but it's the rule that governs the use of the common areas and other properties owned by the association. It's on the website. It really has the same weight as the declaration of restrictions. In other words, people can be cited and fined for not abiding by the rule. The rule, and what we'd like to emphasize a little bit tonight, is the rule talks about and it was designed primarily for the 385 acreage, the green space, the golf course, but any property owned in common by you, the association members, and the POA. And the idea being, simply put, leave the area as you found it. You're free to walk dogs, you're free to walk yourselves, bicycle, do whatever you want, but specifically, no motorized vehicles other than golf courses regulated under the FHPOA golf cart policy, or motorized wheelchairs, which are allowed. But things like four-wheel off-road vehicles, low-speed vehicles, motorcycles. A lot of folks enjoy using the open space on the other side of the park farm, next to the old clubhouse, and like to fish along those lakes. Well, it's kind of started out, people were parking as they should in the lot there by the cart barn, but now people start trucking over the dunes and end up parking right next to the lakes and all that. So no motorized vehicles on that. I mean, the property should be for the convenience and enjoyment of all. So you may have questions later, but that's your update for land use planning. Now, Dan Argentieri.
Thank you, Dan. Quick update on Hurricane Florence insurance concerns and issues that we've had. Neil Richards was not able to be with us tonight, our treasurer, so I'm filling in for that role for today. Kind of going through what we had gone over at the previous two meetings, but we're still looking at that same projected out-of-pocket expenses of $600,000, which was what we had talked about in previous meetings. The total dollar amount of the damages has gone up quite a bit, but that is all stuff, all the increases have been things that will be covered by insurance. So getting things done is way more expensive than it used to be, and it's not getting any cheaper. So we've received $1.2 million in insurance money so far. We've got, obviously, once we finish the construction of the building, payments for that, payments for a few other things, including loss of business, are still coming in. And then we're projecting that the payout would be about $2.1 million worth of damages, which leaves us with that approximate out-of-pocket of $600,000. So, moving on to the clubhouse. So here is your first look at what the inside of the new building, will look like. That is over there on those tables on the right is actually where the golf shop counter in the office was, and this picture is actually taken from pretty much where my office used to be. So everything has been painted. We've got the kitchen equipment in. The left picture is actually the golf shop counter. It's not shown up very well. The countertops came for that today. So we will have IT in tomorrow to get everything done with the technology side of things. The kitchen equipment has been delivered. Most of it is installed. We are waiting on some pieces to get the exhaust on the roof, because the slope was wrong on the ones they originally sent us. So that is our big goal right now, is once that is done, we will be close enough to be able to give a firmer date of when we expect to be in. I am not going to give you a date today. I'm going to let you do some math. Once talking to the contractor today, it looks like we're hoping that if the roof attachments will be in hopefully early next week. We're looking at about another 2 weeks once that's done. So hopefully start of December, we will be ready for a CO. At that point in time, we will have to go through the Craven County Food and Health Department for the food permits. And then once we have that, we'll do a couple weeks of training, a couple weeks of soft openings, and hopefully have everybody in there pretty quickly after that. So that's kind of the timeline that we're working with. That's the best answer the board knows as well. So when you guys harass them and ask for a date, that's what they're going to tell you. Most of you have already asked me for a date at a different time and pretty much gotten an answer of, I don't know. So, other things at the golf course that have been completed since the last time we met, the tee boxes have been redone. Those are back open. I know they weren't open the last time we stood in front of you guys. All the bunkers being redone were completed just before last time. Boat launch. Next thing I get asked about almost every day. So we compiled all the information from the 2 boat launch groups to collect and give to the contractors that were bidding on the project. We ended up, the board has executed a contract with Bobby Cahoon Construction to complete the boat launch, which will be opening. Bobby has given us a date of Easter of 2020. So they are planning on working on it early 2020 and should be done by Easter. So he has, I'm sure you can't read all that information up there because I can't right now, but that was really to give you an example of where the boat ramp is going to be, which is directly over the hill from the first entrance of the shoreline parking lot. Would be your best way to figure out where that is. Kayak launches. So here's a picture that I took this afternoon, and I didn't realize until I got back to the office that the sun was right in the way. But this is the kayak launch that we have put in. That is back where the original kayak launch was. We got some feedback after it went in about the challenges that come with where it is currently set. So we are looking at potentially in the spring reorienting that so that it can be attached to the bulkhead now that the bulkhead has been redone, and making that an easier launch site. We have also, I don't know if he's here tonight, but we have, Ed Thompson actually recovered the old boat launch or old kayak launch for us, and that is currently sitting in a boat slip at the Shoreline Marina. That is not attached to anything and cannot be used yet. Once we have the actual boat launch in, we will relocate that, attach that to the bulkhead over there, so there will actually be 2 kayak launches within the community. So I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer to talk about the playground and things going on around the community.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I get to talk to you about something that's already completed. The playground build day was last month, October 19th, and I want to again thank everybody that came out to help with that. You can see it was not an easy task, but many hands made light work. So it is ready to go. It's still missing some of those timbers that go around the wood chips to encase the wood chips. Those are on order and they're coming. The roof at Red Sail Park is new. I don't have a picture of that, but that happened last month also. Next, we can talk a little bit about court sports. The tennis courts next spring are going to be resurfaced. And we are very excited about that. In addition to that, the pickleball group has a new pavilion that's coming so that will help them to have a safer place for people waiting to play. So really good things moving along in those 2 areas. And the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is something that's been in the works for many years. I think the enhancement committee started thinking about the Marina Drive entrance and how it looks in comparison to the other entrances of the community. So we are getting poles that will have banners and LED lights that look similar to what we have at the entrance at Cassowary. That will be at Marina Drive. And safety and security, at the same time, was thinking very much about getting cameras to help aid in looking at who is coming in and out of that entrance and exit. So cameras will be mounted to those poles, and so we're going to have all of that coming within the next couple of months, which is very exciting. And here's Bruce. Oh, Cindy, sorry.
First is the resident directory. It's going to be redone as of December 1st. So you need to make sure that your information is correct. And if it's not correct, you need to get to Kate right away at the POA office before December 1st. You need to confirm your listing before it can be published in the next issue planned for early 2020. If it's not correct, if you don't confirm with Kate, you're not going to be in the directory. If you're not currently in the resident directory but would like to be, and you haven't yet completed a resident form, please contact the POA office by phone or in person before December 1st. Kate had forms at the back, and it could be easier for you. The POA may not have a valid phone number for you. If you were affected by the flood, and you change your phone, or some people don't have landlines anymore, we don't have the number, we can't call to remind you. So you really need to do this on your own. Please call the POA office after checking your listing. If you are in a club or a group, please check listings, beginning on page 15, for changes to wording or contact names and numbers for your group. Some of them are sadly out of date. People are no longer in the community, and they're still listed as chair or president or whatever of the group. Kate, again, had put forms. If you are a newly established club and would like to be listed in the directory, please provide that information to the POA office as well. If you look in the present directory, you'll see there's a little description of the organization or club, and you want to provide some sort of description to new residents and to the existing residents. Everyone, take a look around. Did you see anything different? Yes. Looks great, right? Okay. All right. Newly painted community center walls and trim completed last week. Is John Coyle here? Oh, he's not here. Well, John Coyle of Elegant Walls Painting and Remodeling did the painting at no cost to the POA. So if you have a paint job, I would suggest calling him. That's Elegant Walls Painting and Remodeling. We provided the paint, but he provided the work on the muscle. And that's terrific. The walls in the interior rooms will be completed later. If you or your group have anything stored in the community center cabinets, please remove it. If it's not removed, remove it this week so that we can clean them. If they're not, if anything is left at the end of this week, it's gone. Okay? I may not be recycled, maybe just dumped. Okay? Otherwise, the items will be discarded. The activity center upgrades, we are presently getting quotes for new flooring and painting of the activity center. Our goal is to have the renovations completed by the end of the fiscal year, February 28th, or by next spring. So things are happening.
I talk about the shoreline, the green space, and one of the things that people thought maybe that the benches were taken away with Florence, but they moved over to Harbor Point Clubhouse, and they will be put back in place at Shoreline. And the other thing was we're going to talk about was the cart path at Shoreline, and that's we're going to repair the necessary holes and patches on the cart paths. And the other thing that we're doing is we're going to keep mowing Shoreline and keeping that very presentable.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the Harborside Drive Water Recreation Area, and that area basically has a boat ramp, a kayak launch and a fishing pier. And if you can see on the slide behind me that the bulkhead had been in disrepair for quite some time, but Hurricane Florence basically dealt it the final blow. And so we went about removing what was left of that bulkhead and then constructing a new bulkhead full length to the waterfront. So from the remainder of the 30-foot section, we now have a 100-foot section of bulkhead that runs continuously under the fishing pier. And it's now 100 feet long, and it will be there for quite some time, having a nice new bulkhead. The area is completely free of debris. It gives a little bit more turning room because the trees and the bushes that Florence took away are no longer there, and it's been neatened up. As Dan said, the kayak launch has been reinstalled, but it will be relocated to the bulkhead in the future, and will provide a straight access for you to put your boat onto the platform and then move directly out into the creek for going around and kayaking. Where there was once an old weathered 2x4 fence, we now have a real fence. It's a split rail fence, looks spanking new and shiny, and it kind of like perks the whole area up. Parking stops will be added in the future to delineate parking spaces so that we will know that there's room for 4 cars. And that area is really designated for passenger vehicles. You're not to leave trailers or your tow equipment there. It's for people who are leaving a vehicle because they're going fishing or just sitting there watching the sunset. And as far as your trailers, you're going to have to find a place to put them. And we know that's a difficult problem down there, but we appreciate your willingness to work together and find a safe space to put them. A ramp shoe was added to the facility to provide access to the fishing pier, whether it's for your little towable coolers or if you have to use some type of personal assistance to navigate the walkways there. But you can walk right up to the fishing pier with no problem. And in the future, we'll be adding a bump stop to the catboards along the bulkhead so that if vehicles or golf carts back up, they will know immediately that they shouldn't go any further or they're going in the drink. Then we have the inner harbor bulkheads. They were also in disrepair. It was a much larger project than the 100 feet down there at Harborside Drive. And we had to break it out into 9 phases. And we started all the way down at the very beginning and worked our way up to the very end. And it was a much bigger job than we expected. Walls were leaning out towards the water, and sections were totally undermined. At times, we weren't sure those bulkheads were going to hold. We worked with Anthony Tyndall with Coastline Construction, who were very, very gentle in pulling those walls back in. And we had real concerns when the tides were not our friends, because it was filling up and putting more and more pressure on the walls. However, we also found some fun things. We were going in looking for verticals and found we only had 10-foot verticals in there and had to pull them out and put in 16-foot verticals. As each section of this repair job was undertaken, replacements were provided to include new verticals, dead man, tie rods, V-boards, and whalers. I never learned as much about putting in a bulkhead in my life than I spent this summer doing. With the completion of the project, new capboards were added the entire length of the inner harbor to finish off that bulkhead. And while the bulkheads will require periodic inspection, the inner harbor now provides a very serene experience and a richer quality of life for the community in general. You put the bulkheads coupled with the mowing, the continued mowing, and the look of that property, I think, is exceptional. Those of us who came through the dog fennel years really know what it's like. And we appreciate everything that Billy Casper has done for us. And now we come to the old Shoreline Clubhouse. The clubhouse has been explored 1,000 different ways as to how to manage it. Obviously, it needs to come down. We've spoken with the planning boards, we've spoken with, we've had some engineering studies done, and it will be coming down in a dry demo. We have an RFP that's about ready to go. I'm still talking with CAMA, the Department of Water Quality, and engineering up in Little Washington, because we sit within 50 feet of the water for some of the materials that will be being pulled out, which is the pool, all the concrete. So we're just trying to make sure that we have everything lined up and won't get, there's no promise, but we won't get caught doing something inappropriate or not knowing what we had to do. So we're just really taking it slow. That building will be coming down. It's long been needed. It can't be salvaged. We've looked at engineering from prior days, and I just was with the planning board in Craven County, and they basically said the same thing. We believe there's pilings down there, we'd have to find them. Maybe they could be used to hold a pier on top, but we don't know where they are, would it support the new building? And what we're questioning now up in Little Washington is, can we even build on that site again? So, bits and pieces. There's other sites within that area, not walking away, but there's other sites within that area. We want to explore everything before we make plans and find we can't execute them. So bear with us, but someday it'll be nice. Roads and Streets Paving Project. The committee has presented their 2020 plan, and the committee is proposing that we would pave Gondolier from Pelican to Helm, which basically is the section of Gondolier that runs all along where the cul-de-sacs are that go out and overlook the inner harbor. One thing we will have to say is the completion of that project will be contingent upon how we resolve the dispute with the current paving company. You were all sent via email the dispute notice, and to make it very simple for those of you who haven't received it, I'm going to simply read it tonight. As you know, this summer the Fairfield Harbor POA completed the repaving of Caracara Drive from Bucko Reef Road to Pelican Drive. In April of this year, the FHPOA board contracted with a local paving contractor to complete the work at a contract price of $261,692.58. It was specific. The contractor, after a competitive bidding process, was chosen over one other bidder who had submitted a competitive bid based on specifications of work that were developed by the engineering firm that oversaw the bidding process, contract and paving process on behalf of the POA. The paving contractor began work in May, and the work proceeded expeditiously and with good results. We're very happy with the results of that paving project. Unfortunately, at the conclusion of the work, the paving contractor submitted a request for payment to the FHPOA for nearly double the agreed contract price, claiming at different times that it had misunderstood the engineer's specifications or that it had made a mistake in its own bidding process. The board immediately sought the advice of legal counsel, and on the advice of counsel, in early October, the POA tendered to the paving contractor the full payment of the contract price, plus one approved change order, for a total of $268,218.08. The paving contractor rejected the payment and elected to file a purported claim of lien, claiming the amount of $525,000 is owed. The board has deposited the full amount tendered into our attorney's trust account to be held pending resolution of the claim. At the advice of counsel, with the concurrence of all board members attending the meeting of November 5th, we wanted to proactively advise the community of the dispute. We wanted to keep you in the loop. Please know that the board will continue to work with legal counsel to resolve the dispute, and always keeping in mind our fiduciary obligation to be good stewards of your funds. And there has been recently questions and concerns that, oh my God, Fairfield's in litigation again. And so to dispel that rumor that's circulating, our attorney has again made another statement. At present, a questionable claim of lien has been filed by a paving contractor. There is no pending litigation involving the association. Even if a lawsuit were to be filed to perfect the claim of lien, the association has more than adequate reserve funds on hand to pay the disputed claim. POA counsel has advised that the claim of lien does not present a situation that needs to be disclosed on the Residential Property and Owners Association disclosure statement. If the situation changes, we'll be advising the community. So please, if anybody says anything about a lawsuit, we are not in litigation at this point in time, okay? And now I'm going to move it on to Bob.
All right, well, with all that being said, I get the fun stuff. Budget planning time. As you can see through the presentations that preceded me, we've done a lot for the harbor as the board. Hold it closer. There we go. Can everybody hear better now? Okay. Viewing the previous slides, you see that we've creatively done a lot with the funds that we have available to us. But now comes the big time of year, which is budget planning time, or how we're going to proceed in the future and how we're going to put ourselves in a fiscal situation where we're going to be able to do more of what we've done, but bigger and better things, hopefully. That being said, one of the things that we have in place here at Fairfield Harbor are committees. And we have multiple committees that make advisory or suggestions to the planning board. And that helps us look at what we
going to do with the monies that we have available to us. So, that being said, if there are any committee members that are here in the audience tonight, please keep that in mind. Our budget has to be in place by the end of January, beginning of January, soon. So the sooner you get those figures to us, the better. But this being my first year on the board, one thing that I can say as far as the budget goes, I know that every member of the board of directors is very fiduciary conscious. We look at every cent that goes out the door and how it goes out the door, how it's spent, and what we're going to get for that dollar. My personal observation has been our dollars, the hurricane took a big hit, and it showed $600,000 of expenditures that we didn't plan for. We planned for, but not plan. You can't plan for that much that quick. That being said, we need to look at that as well for future planning. But we're going to have to, in order to get our home, Fairfield Harbor, to be what we want Fairfield Harbor to be, we're going to have to get the input from the community that Dan had mentioned earlier, that we're going to, and Dan Engelhaupt had mentioned earlier. We're going to put out feelers. Again, we need to know how to prioritize what it is the community wants to see in the future, and then it's up to us as fiduciaries to come back to you and tell you this is what we can do, and this is what we're physically able to do. And I'm personally, I don't like to pull any punches, and I don't like to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. It's going to be a tough uphill battle. We have big decisions to make, but we as a board also have to make big decisions each year as to how we're going to establish our budget. So please get that information to us as quick as you can. Budget planning is in process, been in process. It's getting towards crunch time, and we want to be able to give you good numbers for next year.
Okay, everybody's been talking about how we've been spending your money. And I'm going to talk about some revenue generating things. We are looking at taking some of the land, 2 acres, and making a self-storage lot, like we're storing boats and trailers, or RVs, or maybe get some storage rooms like the
Bridgeton.
Bridgeton. We'll have those. We don't know exactly what we need, and we're trying to figure that out, and it's like doing it in a vacuum. So we're going to be sending out a survey form, emailing it, and if you can come back to us and let us know what you think you might want. You're not committing to do anything, but it's like I can get enclosed 12 by 45 foot buildings for RVs. Do we need those? If so, how many? How many people want a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 15 storage building? If I can get some kind of basic information, we can get rolling on this and have a place for you to store your boats, your RVs, and your extra treasures that you have in your house. Or you presently have in Bridgeton, in my case. But we'll be getting that out hopefully next week to you, and we appreciate your prompt response.
I like that. I like that. That's the way to raise money. Look for ways to raise money.
I'm back over here, so we have a mic to go around the floor for questions and comments shortly. What I'd like to do before we move on to the question period is just to make a couple of statements that will follow up on basically what fire directors have said already. Can you hear me out there?
No.
As Bob has just finished up on budgets, your board of directors is elected by fellow homeowners to make decisions for the well-being of the community, including community's finances are managed. And as Bob said, we're in the process of preparing next year's budget, which will be presented to the community in late January. We'll project an operating budget to cover all expenses associated with the daily functioning of the community and prepare a reserve budget to pay for planned projects down the line. That's how we have money in the reserve for major work and maintenance like road paving, stormwater, huge building HVAC replacements. However, there's a prevailing notion that keeping dues flat means a board is doing a good job. But raising dues doesn't necessarily mean that a board is falling short either. There are valid instances where raising dues is the right decision for the long-term health and prosperity of any community. Maintaining artificially low dues might appease residents in the short term, but will inevitably catch up with the association, impacting its ability to function and maintain its appearance to the satisfaction of the majority of homeowners. While a historically flat budget could be easy on the homeowner's pocketbook, it might be at the expense of enriching or even sustaining the overall community with every passing year. Many here talk of wanting X, Y, or Z. You fill in the blank. We talk about the boat launch. We talk about multi-purpose community buildings or a pool. All these things cost money. They can be planned for over time, but they will still cost money. You heard Dan Engelhop talk on how we will be coming to you to identify what is desired in this community, and then we'll come back to you with projected costs. What I'm simply saying is that we will do our best to plan a budget that is not outlandish nor unrealistic where it comes to maintaining the community. We've all come out of Florence, and we know what it was like to have all systems fail in a major disaster, and deal with the insurance fights and reconstruction that came with it. And we as a business entity, the association, your association, are no different than you. We will face the challenges, but we will perform our fiduciary duty to the association and create a realistic budget and not one that might be based on promises, because we have to be able to deliver what we said we would do for the community. And one last bit of business before we move into the question portion is, and Dan spoke to Rule 2017-01. Your board is authorized and tasked with establishing rules and policies for the overall good of the community. Yesterday, the board passed revisions to the sign policy that will better define the when, where, and whys of signage. In brief, signage of any type is not allowed at any main entrance to the community. Signs cannot be posted more than 5 days in advance of the event being advertised, unless special dispensation is given by our community manager, Jennifer Goditis, right there. Over the past few months, I've had the pleasure of engaging both political precinct members regarding signs, as well as several community groups regarding their signage. This is why we've moved to establish clearer parameters for the residents to follow. Where signage is in violation on POA common property, it shall be removed. Where signage is in violation of the DORs on private property, the owner will be sent a notice to remediate within a defined time frame. Hopefully, we can all work together for the betterment of the community and not have squabbles over who had their sign up for 3 days and who had their sign up for 5 days, but now there will be consistent policy we all can follow. So that's my little spiel for those 2 items. What I'd like to do now is just open the floor up to anybody who has questions for the board, and we'll be glad to entertain them. So for the first hand I saw right here, sir.
Peter Bitzing with 6,005 Stern Court. The question I have is regarding the shoreline building. And you said it's going to be taken down, I guess just right? No, knock it down. At one point I thought there was a discussion about burning it.
Yes.
I was wondering, what is the difference between burning it and taking it down brick by brick?
We're still looking at the difference in the cost. Quite frankly, you have, in a situation where you have to have the insurance, we have to need an insurance policy if we're going to burn that down. You have a lot of trees in the way that may cause some conflagration up there. And you still have to find a site to put those materials, and those materials can substantially change once they've been set to higher temperatures on fire. We're also doing the boat launch at the same time. That's our intention if we can get this thing rolling correctly, so that we'd be using fill from one site or materials dug out to fill another site. I can't give you a final price because the only price that I had gotten previously was for destruction of everything on that hill, and it was quite high. So now looking at just the building, we're expecting it to be a little bit different.
Will you make those numbers available?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that would not be a hidden number, no. There was a Pat Dumont's hand went up. Pat's got a mic, hang on to yours, Bill. It's not working.
There we go. Now we're working. Pat Dumont, I live on Royal Pines Drive. First, a comment and then a question. I want to compliment the board for all the hard work they've been putting in since Hurricane Florence came through. The inner harbor looks phenomenal. The Red Cell Park, the roof in the playground is adorable. The golf course looks great. Shoreline looks great. And it's a pleasure to drive through the harbor now and see not only the houses that have been rebuilt and people moving back in their homes, but the rest of the community. It just looks great. Thank you. Now my question. I know that the $100 that we paid last year did not cover that $600,000 deficit. Did that come out of the reserve account? Where did we come up with that deficit? It's a money thing with me, sorry.
I'll leave that to Dan.
So this is when Neil should be here. Overall, so obviously you look at it as the $100 generated $280,000 in income. So that offsets $280,000 of that. There was also, the board had some budget amount in their contingency fund that was set aside for insurance deductibles, as well as at that point in time, we were trending extremely well above or under budget going into that hurricane, which was really, really probably the thing that put us up to be able to offset those costs. And a lot of those costs were parts of those things that were absorbed out of reserves that were coming either this year or next year. So some of the things that were damaged, i.e. Harbor Point Clubhouse, and other things like that, were things that were budgeted in that following year or the year afterwards in reserves. So it came from a few different directions, but overall, it was really from the savings from where we were trending earlier in the year, as well as insurance covered a good amount of we didn't have a loss on income because we had the business loss income. So those things have all trended together to allow us to cover the cost of that.
Joe Pica, I live at 10031 Windward Drive over here. I have two questions, one comment first. When we had the study done, and I attended the presentation, the area in the Marina District was not covered at all or included in the study, and I made a comment to that, and the contracted group appeared to be stunned. I wanted to know if that was indeed an afterthought that has been since incorporated in the overall planning and vision. That's one. The other one is, looking ahead, we had an event that was catastrophic for us, Florence. You've had one, you're going to have another. One of the issues was that we escaped, that would have been devastating, was the cost of rubbish and debris removal. Luckily, we skated out of it with the good graces of Craven County, but we're not qualified for the FEMA grants to clear that up. And as a result of that, I think there's been a reactivation of the municipality study group. And I was wondering if that is proceeding as planned to try and mitigate that kind of an unanticipated catastrophic event.
I'm going to leave that to Dan because Dan is the person who will answer both those questions.
The KCI study, the land use study, the RFP and the instructions that they were given were to look at the open spaces, not necessarily housing areas such as yours. It was to look at the open spaces and to give us, and this is basically based on the, I won't say demand, but the needs and desires of the community. They said, let's have a land use study that provides us some insight into, we know we have out of that 385 acres, 205 acres that are dedicated to the Harbor Point Golf Club and the golf complex. It was to take then that other 180 acres and say, what should we do with that? It's land with no DORs on it. It's land that's not otherwise restricted. So let's do a land use study to figure out what to do. Again, driven by things like the Municipality Study Committee, the Multifunctional Facility Study Committee that was saying, hey, let's develop that area on shoreline. So it was never in the direction of the KCI land use or land planning study to look at developed areas such as yours, Joe.
Well, the area that, I don't need the mic, the area that I'm particularly interested in, there's a lot of vacant lots. And
Right.
I thought that they looked into the vacant lots as well, and in conjunction with the boat launch ramp on that side of the Marina District, there's no place to put trailers and boat trailers and tow vehicles. However, there is a double or triple lot over there. It's a really pretty big lot. It's fully forested. And I don't know if that was taken into consideration within a context of that POA property and the use for the community at large.
The general subject of what to do with 700 undeveloped lots, 130 lots that at the time, that's just a ballpark figure, that was all looked at by them for things like storage facilities, boat launch facilities, trailer storage, parks and recreation. That's where the soccer field, things like that came from. So even though they might not have looked at those specific two lots, that subject was covered, and the recommendations are in there, and the recommendations will be going out in that survey that we talked about. Let me move to the other question, which was Municipality Study Committee, something near and dear to my heart that I just forgot about. There was a Municipality Study Committee that was started. I'm the liaison to that group. We have 4 members of that group, and so far we've had about 3 meetings. And I have to say, I don't find a lot of support in this community. When you read the 2000 study on municipalities, the Municipality Study Committee that we had, when you look at the Common Fair study that was done in 2011 timeframe, the big concern was just what you said. The Stafford Act, as you know, which is the Bible, and the overall guidance for FEMA says FEMA will not provide support to a community with gates and with privately owned roads. And through the good graces of the Craven County Commissioners, we got an exemption in the last 2 hurricanes for that. So that was part of the genesis of saying, let's start a municipality study committee. I'm charged in the next 6 months with giving a report back to the board and say, look, should we bring that to this gets a little complicated, but should we bring it to the North Carolina legislature in their full session, the next one, which would be in 2022. So what we would have to do, the process you have to go through, is you have to poll, or you have to have a vote of all of the voters who would be affected by the municipality. And then that has to be taken up by the Board of Elections of Craven County. And so we have some time there, but again, my personal sense as the liaison to that committee is there's not a lot of support out here for a municipality. For 40 years we've done fine as a subdivision, as the Fairfield Harbor subdivision. Granted, you can look back in the annals of Fairfield Harbor, Treasure Cove and all that, it was anticipated we would eventually become a town. But we can't do that without the support of folks. So that process is continuing, but at this point in time, it's fact gathering, and I don't think it would be appropriate to again do a poll of people, because you end up, if there's 2,600 registered voters in Fairfield Harbor, you end up getting about 500 people who will actually stand up and say, yes, I want it, or no, I don't. So this is a work in progress, it really is. But again, within the next 6 months, it'll be presented to the board. We've talked to politicians, we've talked to other, elected officials, we've talked to other towns, and unincorporated areas. So it's a work in progress.
Hi, I'm Bill Jarvis, 56.
I'm Bill Jarvis, 5620 Gondolier Drive. Very interesting to hear all of the things that you're considering adding in the future. I'm somewhat concerned about those things that we already have. Things where we've had years of deferred maintenance. In other words, they've had benign neglect. Some of the underground drainage structures are corrugated metal that have already collapsed. We need to look at what we need to do to maintain what we have before we start to build and fund and finance new activities, because not only is the cost going to be the cost that you determine by the bids and the financing cost, but every one of those things will require additional maintenance on an ongoing basis, or they too will deteriorate to becoming non-functional and dead. It's a big problem, and if you don't know where some of these problems are, I'd be happy to take you around and show you. Thank you. By the way, I was on that prior Common Fair committee. It died, as you say, because of just sheer apathy on the part of the community to get behind it and support it.
If I could follow up for one little piece. Dan Argenteri, Will Caudle, myself, Rose Lidkey, and I can't think of the gentleman's first name, Stewart is his last name, had the pleasure or horror of going around and looking at all this, Dick Goodwin, of going around and looking at all the outfalls and the swales. And I'm going to ask Dan if he would just speak to what he had heard when he contacted the state. But in the interim, I would also like to say that while we appreciate homeowners who want to help us, one of the things we found, I guess, was individuals who may not have understood how those drainage basins work thought probably it was a good idea to cut out the weirs, which then doesn't hold the water back, doesn't let it infiltrate into the ground, doesn't let it operate properly. So we're now replacing the weirs that people were kind enough to take out for us. But Dan also has been in touch with the state on multiple issues, and I'll let him talk to you.
Thank you, Gloria.
So overall, Bill was on the stormwater committee when we first got here, and it worked with Will in the past. And I think over this past winter, there's a lot of things that happen that aren't always seen. But the current stormwater committee, Mike Shannon, who is moving on us, if Mike Endeavor here, Mike will be severely missed. But have gone through and worked out game plans and prioritization of current issues and things that they are prioritizing to work with Will and get done, as most of these projects end up being winter projects, because once the grass starts growing, we have plenty, and there's not a whole lot else we can do besides mow and make things, aesthetically pleasing. So, on the other hand, I ended up somehow within my golf professional job, ended up talking to DWQ, which would be Roger Thorpe out of the Little Washington office. And when we renewed the gondolier stormwater permit, they came down and did a comprehensive review of that in March of 2018. And we were, I don't know exactly what the word was that he used to rate it, but was above what they expected, the standard of what it looks like compared to what it was when it was built. So that was a very pleasant answer for us, and hopefully with the work that Will's doing to maintain those, as well as some of the contractors that have been brought in through the Stormwater Committee, we will continue to improve the drainage areas that we have.
What's so weird?
Here is essentially, it restricts the water flow. So there's areas along the Gondolier Peninsula that actually are supposed to hold water, that are wetlands. And so those areas are not supposed to drain, those areas are not supposed to drain at an unlimited rate to the harbor. So there is actually a weir with, I don't know who designed the shapes, but they're all different interesting shapes of squares and blocks and everything. But it essentially limits the flow of water out into the swales that go into the inner harbor, or Spring Creek, or Northwest Spring.
Hi, Bill Rivera, 902 Lanyard Lane. I'm the only one I'm living on my block right now. But my question is, I want to congratulate you on the plans that you have, and thank you personally, but I want to make a statement. And the statement is that while there are a lot of us that are pretty well off, there's a lot of us that are on restricted income. So when you start making these plans and you're aggressive about it, remember how many we have in here and how much we can raise. And when you have someone on a fixed income, consider that as well. And like I said, we have people that are well off, and then we have people that are, on a limited income. And then I also have one other question. And if you own two properties, one you have built on, and one you don't have built on, how come you still have to pay the same POA dues for property that is not built on? It's just natural land. And I've never asked that question, but I wanted to find out. Thank you for all that you do.
That's a question that has been asked before, and it varies from community to community. Our community, we charge the dues rate. It's the same whether it's an improved lot or an unimproved lot. And that's basically how your DORs were constructed. If you wanted to change your DORs, you can go about doing it. You would have to bring in a petition. And you bring the petition in, you have to have, I believe it's 10% of the community sign the petition. Once that's brought in, the board would have to call the vote. And the vote would require a 67% majority in the affirmative to change the DORs. It's not an easy process. It can be done. The difficulty is also we have, I want to say 14, but I'm not sure exactly, how many different sets of voting communities within this community. So it's a matter of coordinating it. It's not that it cannot be done, but that is not within the power of your board. That is within the power of the property owners. Okay? But it's up to you guys to do it.
Is that the same thing? Like I know that on the dark side, you can keep your boat on your
Yes.
property.
Yes.
But on this side, you're not allowed to. So that's something that a petition can be started?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Hi, Cheryl Stevenson, I'm with Caroline Court. I have a comment and a question. The comment is the pickleball improvements, the pavilion is self-funded, that was paid for by the pickleball players, not by you all. Number two, the kayak rack, or is there a possibility to add a kayak rack along with the launch? So we don't have to haul them every day?
Anything is possible. That is actually, I've heard that a couple times. I would need some more, we would need to do some more research into that. There's definitely a possibility of that. But it is not something that the board has had an in-depth conversation into.
Okay, you can hear me without the mic. George Marabella, 6314 Cardinal Drive. If it at all possible to bring up the slide of the launch ramp and the fishing pier, you people did a fantastic job rebuilding that. Okay. Get a picture of the, if you can get it. Okay, well, right there. Okay. Where that white pole is, where the launch ramp is, if somebody would go down there, it's starting to erode. Okay? I use that extensively, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. When I get down there, you're going to make a parking spot for these cars, right? You're going to park them nose into the fence. And if you get a pickup truck with a trailer hitch on it, you cannot make the swing with your boat. Come out. What's happening is, because of that, we have to get close to that embankment. And it's starting to wear, it's starting to erode. Okay, where it is now. The beautiful picket fence that you have up there, the reason why they had no parking there is because of what's happening now. You get 2 or 3 cars or pickup trucks in there, you cannot swing around there. I have a small boat, and I have a tough time getting in and out. It's going to wash away. And I hate to see all of that hard work and all that beautiful space that we have there. All right, we, with our trailers, we hunt and peck and we look for a place to park. These people would just come down there and park. And you have a group of people that go down there with their golf carts, and they hold their drinking sessions down there. You don't want to get involved with them and ask them to move, because then they get right up into your face, right? And it's just as easy to get out of there and find another place to launch your boat. We try, as a fishing club, to do what we can to maintain the pier. I don't know, wheelchairs on that dock scare me. So you have a ramp for wheelchairs, I think you're going to have a problem. But other than that, I would just like to see the maintenance, and so you don't lose everything that we've gained over there, and it doesn't wash away. If somebody would just take a ride down, and more, you could take a walk down there or ride down and just take a look at it. It's from the launch ramp itself back about 50 feet along the bulkhead, and you can see where it's just starting to collapse.
George, I'll be glad to go down with you someday, take a look at it, because I do try to get down and take a look at that site.
I can't do it tomorrow because I'm fishing.
But I would gladly make the time to go down. I'll go down without you to take a look at it in the interim.
Okay, if you want, just give me a call, and I'll gladly meet you down there, or we
No
just go down
problem,
and take a look
no
at
problem. And as far as wheelchairs on the ramp, you can't deny them access.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. If it was me, I would
You would want your
be
chair out there so you could have a rod.
No, I would be very careful on that with the wheelchair.
Okay. And I guess Will, you and I will talk about how many parking spaces we can accommodate. To go back to parking issues, I know that Joe raised a question, and I'll say this. Boards stand on the shoulders of prior boards, and decisions get made, decisions get rescinded. That particular piece of land you're talking about, Joe, had been purchased by a prior board and had been subsequently sold by a prior board in its best decisions. So I'm aware of it, but it's no longer a POA property. There's very little POA property down in the marina area. There's very little common property. There's very little common property, POA property in the harbor side, Harbor Point side. The space is over there on the shoreline. That's where the open area is.
We should donate it. Buy it and donate.
Okay, Anita English, Karen. I've lived here since ever, and it seems to me that there used to be an area that we had for RVs and for boats, and over the years it's kind of gotten forgotten about or lost. Does anybody know what the condition of that is and how easily that could be refurbished? Where am I? It's that way.
Yeah, I'm right here. This is, it is still exists, it still exists. There's about 32 spots down there, I believe. I see a lot of faces that are all looking at me because you are all on the list of people who want to get in. It is completely full. The wait list is probably bigger than the number of spaces that we have. It is something that we are looking at as a, I'm actually laughing as how many of you are actually on the list. They're staring at me right now. We do still have it. It's still operating. It's still, we still generate revenue from it. It is just one of those things where there is a limited number of spaces down there inside that fenced-in area, and enough of you have more boats than you know what to do with, or trailers, or anything else that Jennifer has made you take off of your property. So you are all on that list. So yes, we still have that. Yes, we still. I come down to Will's shop about maybe once every other month and ask him to, move more of his stuff into a smaller space so I can sell another spot. But there's not much left down there. So it is something that we continue with.
What about that big building? I mean, it used to be that all the clubs had a sort of a bin, and the clubs have moved their stuff out years ago. What is that building used for now?
It's our maintenance building.
It's like a big, huge Quonset, two-story Quonset hut.
Yeah, it's completely full.
It's full of...
It was full of 4 feet of water in the hurricane, and now it's full of maintenance equipment.
Okay. It used to be full of liquor. Well, that's true.
What room is that in?
It was up on the second floor in a big bin. Huge amounts of liquor stored there. Okay, that's not the point. The point is that can that be, any of that be claimed for some of this? I mean, when you talk about putting storage buildings, I just want to know whether or not we already have some land and we don't have to put it out on the shoreline.
I'm going to be honest with you. We are looking at everything. We are looking at all locations, and no matter what, somebody's going to be unhappy with everything we do. But we are really looking at all locations. Maury has spent more time in that map of the shoreline property as well as the map of the community in the last couple of weeks, trying to figure out locations and potential spots. So it is not something that we're going to take lightly. It will take some careful consideration, and we're going to do our best to make sure that it impacts the fewest number of people, as well as being in a place that creates the best opportunity.
Well, I want to thank you for the beautiful view you gave me by carrying down all those ugly, awful, rotted trees and that big clump of dog fountain. I mean, hello! It's fabulous. So now that I finally have a view, I'm just really stressed that somebody's going to build a storage building and block my view. And then when I commented on that privately to a board member, I was told, well, don't worry about it, we're going to plant trees to block the building. Well, that still doesn't appeal to most of us, to have a barrier of trees blocking the view of a storage building. So I hope that you guys will reconsider what I don't know if there's this big demand for storage when the Bridgeton has built a second building. And all
it is probably the biggest demand that we have. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It's not, the golf course, isn't full every day, but the storage room is full every single day. And I gotta be honest with you, Kate, Kristen, Jen, how many times do you guys email me about it? Probably once a week about somebody else wanting a storage spot. So, but it's not something that we're gonna, just plop down in the middle of somebody's backyard and say, this is what you get. There will be some careful consideration of that, as well as careful consideration of everything else in this land use plan. I promise you that this board is working very hard to make as many people happy as possible.
Well, I'm going to be unhappy.
Unfortunately, you are given the right to be unhappy.
I'm not seeing any hands up at this point in time. Oh, there's one more hand that comes.
At the last meeting, I asked the board about exploring the possibility of getting insurance to cover things such as the debris cleanup that we would be facing without being a municipality. I was wondering whatever happened with that request. Getting an insurance policy.
We have reached Gallagher Bassett, who is our insurance company through the POA, has been asked that question. He has looked at multiple different options. When we do go through our renewal this year, he is planning on presenting us with some options. I don't imagine that they're going to be too feasible because insurance company, we have probably the only insurance policy at the golf course that will cover a tree that isn't on a road or a building. But they are working on coming up with some solutions for us that would allow us to not be a municipality but still have coverage on up to an X dollar amount of debris. The issue with the debris is that the debris is coming off of your property and becoming our responsibility. And that's where insurance gets weird. Because your insurance and our insurance shouldn't have to pay for something that comes off of your property. If it was a tree that was on our property, that fell on our property, there is a way to insure that. He is trying to figure out a way to insure something that you cut, that falls on your property, you cut up, put on our property, and then we have to pick up. There's really no way to limit how much stuff you put on our property. That's where it's weird because we don't insure your property. It's an odd situation. We have a wonderful agent that's working on it, but we have not come up with a solution for that yet.
Okay.
One more in the back.
It's a little longer than the book.
Hi, good morning. 5608 Gondolier. You had indicated that a portion of Gondolier was going to be paved. Why just a portion? You have a sinkhole of Gondolier as well? And several others that are starting.
This is what the committee has recommended. It was starting at Pelican, Gondolier.
Can't hear you, Gloria.
It was, the committee has, this is the committee's recommendation. It doesn't mean that there won't be a subsequent paving project in the next year. Each year, a certain amount of reserve fund is put in for roads and streets. The committee has said that they would take the project on from Pelican, around the Gondolier Peninsula to Helm. So you're swinging along.
All the way 3/4 of the way around.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And then probably at some point in the next year or two, they might pick up the next portion. We don't control what the committee says they're going to pay. They look around and try to find the worst spot.
Excuse me, could you give me your name again? I didn't.
Your name again?
Linda Gawain, 5608 Gondolier.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you raising your hand out or what? Could you ask me at home?
I think I can shout loud enough. Are there any projections on the storage unit that are available, or is it still too soon to project some income that would offset our dues?
I think it's still too soon. I think that's what Maury was talking about. We will send out a survey to you and you'll tell us what your needs and wants are as far as what you're willing to rent at that point in time. It gives us a better idea of how to configure it because as Maury has discovered, you can configure these units any which way you want. small ones, large ones, boats, RVs, they can all be put together, and as Anita's concerned about, as well as the board, where would be the best place to put it so that it's the least offensive to the most people. And yes, in time, trees will grow around it, and you won't even know it's there. But so give us a little bit of time to take a look at this. Maury's doing a fine job. Every member of your board works their tail off to figure out what to do with this community. We're larger than some towns and municipalities in North Carolina. We're bigger than like Snow Hill and Pink Hill, yet we're just a PUD at the end of Broad Creek Road. And seeing no further hands, I'd like to stop.
My name is Norman Meisler. I live in 6,000 Cardinal. And I'm not sure if I'm sort of hearing impaired, but you said, I believe earlier, that when the clubhouse is destroyed, the property where it sits, the site cannot be used again.
I did not say that. I said we don't know if it can be built upon in that particular location, not on the whole 9-acre tract. It's just, it would be complex to build something when there's pilings left in the ground and you have to locate them. The engineering studies that people keep talking about with this are to find the pilings, to pull them out. Is that the most cost-effective way to use that particular tract? Or could we just simply move over and find a better spot to build a property if in fact that's what the community wants to do? We're not making the decision to build a property or not. That has to come down to the community because ultimately everybody has to pay a piece of it.
Couldn't they use the footprint of the old clubhouse?
That has been looked at. The old clubhouse, the configuration is kind of like an L. Doesn't lend you to be able to divide the building up for multiple groups, as I'm sure people who use this building are well aware this room is always in use. Just trying to get in here to paint was nearly impossible. And we need a larger building to service the amount of people who were here. When that clubhouse was built, there weren't 1,800 homes on the tract that we all are now. There's not 3,000 people here back then in 79. So that's one of the problems with it. And it's just the wrong configuration.
I understand what you're saying, but my point is they can still use the original footprint and enlarge on it. You don't know this.
You don't, thanks Walt, you don't know that. We had talked about cantilevering even. Try to come out from the existing building, cantilever out and build on that. Sometimes it's actually less expensive to start new rather than trying to figure out how to retrofit something. And we're trying to just figure out the best way, which is why there's not this great rush to suddenly throw a building up. We're trying to put thoughts, we're being very thoughtful into how to proceed and how to keep you involved.
Very well, I understand, but aesthetically, I think it's a wonderful location.
And we're not saying we're leaving the location. I mean, you can simply just go 50 feet to the side. You just don't know yet as to what we can do there. Plus, I'm still talking with Little Washington, which will tell us how close we can get to that water or not.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see a hand. He did have his hand up in all.
Laura, I just wanted to say, my name is Doug King. I live at 5504. My wife Kathy and I live at 5504 Gondolier. Came into the clubhouse Sunday evening in the aftermath of the painting, and Gloria and her husband Al were cleaning and reassembling the cabinets. I just wanted to let everybody know how hard the work is and how much time and energy they're really devoting on all of our behalf. And I wanted to let everybody know that.
And on that note, it's time to shut this baby down. I want you all to have a wonderful evening and have a very warm and thankful Thanksgiving next week.